April 2015. Four bodies lay scattered across the red dust of the Maghari Game Reserve in South Africa. One adult lioness. Three nearly grown cubs. Their throats torn with precision, their bodies still warm when the patrol vehicle arrived at first light. There was no sign of a territorial takeover. No evidence of a feeding frenzy. No chaos. What lay before the Rangers was deliberate, methodical, and chillingly calm. This was not a random act of survival. This was revenge at a reckoning that had been building for more than a year, carried in memory, sharpened by loss, and executed with terrifying patience by a single young male lion who had once been a helpless cub. To understand how this moment came to exist, it was necessary to go back, not months, but years, back to a time when Maghari was ruled by a very different queen. December 2011. Back then, the eastern basin of Maghari belonged to a lioness named Nyota. The Rangers knew her well. Guides recognized her instantly by the pale scar that curved across her upper flank and by the subtle hitch in her stride. Her left hind leg never fully carried weight. It swung just slightly wide, a reminder of an injury no one had witnessed, but everyone noticed. Among the trackers, she was called the Broken Queen, but Nyota was anything but weak. Where other lionesses relied on speed and coordinated ambushes, Nyota relied on patience. She learned the land in a way few predators ever did. She memorized the rhythms of the herds, the hours when impala gathered too close to the riverbank, the paths zebras favored during seasonal movement. She waited, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. And when she struck with certainty. Her territory was prime, water year-round, thick cover, reliable prey. For a lioness with a disability, it was the difference between survival and death. And Nyota defended it fiercely. She was not alone. That summer, she raised two cubs, a male and a female. Both carried her amber eyes. The male was bold, curious, always pressing forward into danger before thinking. The female was observant, cautious, staying close to her mother's injured side. Together, they were a fragile but determined family, one that became a favorite among visitors. Vehicles lined the tracks each morning hoping for a glimpse of the limping lioness and her cubs. Nyota became a symbol, proof that weakness did not mean defeat, that survival could look different and still succeed. For several months, life followed a predictable rhythm. The cubs grew. Nyota hunted. The territory thrived. But peace in the wild is never permanent, because while Nyota ruled Maghari's eastern basin, another lioness watched from beyond its borders. Her name was Zira. Zira was younger, stronger, and starving. She had been born into a large pride in a neighboring reserve where competition was brutal and mercy non-existent. When food grew scarce, she was driven out by older females, forced to wander alone. For nearly a year, she survived on stolen kills and abandoned carcasses, her ribs pressing visibly beneath her coat. Then she crossed into Maghari. The moment Zira reached the eastern basin, she knew what she had found. Permanent water, predictable prey, shelter, everything she had lost, and more. But there was one obstacle. Nyota. From the tall grass, Zira studied her. The limp, the slower turn, the momentary hesitation when standing. To Zira, it looked like opportunity. A weakness waiting to be exploited. Rangers noticed the newcomer immediately. A lone lioness inside claimed territory was a warning sign. They monitored both females closely, knowing the outcome was inevitable. Territory meant food. Food meant life. There was no room for compromise. January 2012, the confrontation happened at the river just after dawn. Nyota had brought her cubs down to drink when Zira emerged from the opposite bank. The air tightened. Neither moved. Water rippled between them. Then Nyota roared, a deep, rolling sound that echoed across the basin. A warning. A declaration. Zira stepped forward anyway. The fight that followed lasted nearly 20 minutes and left the ground torn and bloodied. Claws ripped fur. Teeth closed around shoulders and necks. Dust filled the air. The cubs watched. From the bushes, bodies shaking, their world collapsing in front of them. Nyota fought with everything she had. Her injury made her cautious, but it also made her precise. She bit where it mattered. She used angles, timing, leverage. Zira fought with raw-powered eye. In the end, Nyota stood. Zira retreated, bleeding, limping away from the basin she had tried to claim. Nyota remained. The cubs survived. The territory stayed hers. For months afterward, life returned to normal. Zira's scent faded. Vehicles relaxed. The danger seemed over. It wasn't. Zira had not left to forget. She left to recover. March 2012. The dry season settled over Maghari, turning the land brittle and unforgiving. Water vanished everywhere except the eastern basin. And that abundance pulled Zira back, not with hunger alone, but with rage. This time, she didn't announce herself. Nyota sensed the danger seconds before the attack. Her body stiffened. Her ears rotated. Her cubs froze. Zira burst from the grass without warning. There was no standoff. No roar. Only violence. Zira went straight for Nyota's injured leg, tearing into the weakness with relentless focus. Nyota fought back, but months of raising cubs had worn her down. She was slower, tired. The cubs watched from behind a termite mound, terror rooting them in place. After half an hour, Nyota's strength failed. Zira's jaws closed around her throat. The sound that followed stayed with those cubs for the rest of their lives. Nyota collapsed. The broken queen was gone, but Zira didn't stop there. She fed on Nyota's body, not from hunger, but dominance. Erasure. The cubs watched their mother disappear piece by piece, the image carving itself into memory. When Zira finally looked up, her muzzle red, her eyes found the cubs. Instinct took over. The male ran. His sister followed. They fled without looking back, legs burning, lungs screaming, until the basin disappeared behind them. Zira chased briefly, then stopped. She believed the wild would finish what she had started. She was wrong. The cubs reached the edge of Maghari and collapsed beneath a thorn tree, alone and traumatized. The female stayed for months, hunting small prey, keeping them alive. Eventually, instinct pulled her away. The male remained. He survived by learning, by watching, by remembering. And in his mind, something dark took root, something patient, something that would one day return. By the time 3 years had passed, the eastern basin of Maghari Game Reserve no longer remembered Nyota. Grass had regrown where blood once soaked the soil. New claw marks layered over old ones on the acacia trunks. The waterhole reflected calm skies again. To most creatures moving through the basin, life had reset itself, indifferent to the violence that once reshaped it. But memory does not fade the same way for all beings. Far beyond Maghari's core, on the dry and unforgiving outskirts where prey was scarce and competition ruthless, Nyota's son was no longer a cub. He had grown into a fully formed male lion, tall, broad-chested, his mane darkening with age, shadows threading through the gold. The rangers who occasionally caught fleeting glimpses of him gave him a name without knowing his story. They called him Kovu. That he moved like a ghost. Rarely seen, never careless. He hunted alone, learned to stalk without sound, to kill quickly, cleanly, without waste. Hunger shaped him, but memory guided him. Every scar he earned hardened him further. Every night, when he rested beneath the stars, his dreams returned him to one image: the moment his mother fell, and the lioness who fed on her body. Kova did not roar to claim territory. He did not rush challenges. He waited. Back in Maghari, Zira ruled comfortably. The basin flourished under her control. Prey remained abundant. Her hunts grew easier. Over time, she healed from her injuries, though her left eye never fully recovered. The damage dulled her depth perception, but like Nyota before her, she adapted. The irony was lost on her. Zira gave birth twice. Her first litter after the takeover produced 3 cubs, 2 males and a female. They thrived. Tourists admired them. Guides spoke of Zira as a strong, successful queen who had fought her way into prosperity. The ugliness of her ascent faded into whispers, but something unseen began circling the edges of her world. The first death came without warning. One morning, the larger male cub failed to return from a routine patrol. His body was found 2 days later near the eastern boundary. Throat torn. No feeding. No struggle marks beyond the kill itself. It didn't make sense. Infanticide followed patterns. This did not. Zira searched, roared, patrolled endlessly. The killer never revealed himself. Months later, the second male died the same way. Same precision. Same silence afterward. By then, fear replaced confidence. Zira no longer rested easily. She slept lightly. Her remaining daughters stayed close, watching shadows, listening too carefully. The basin felt wrong, too quiet, too tense. What Zira didn't know was that the lion stalking her family wasn't a rival passing through. It was her past returning. Kovu had waited until maturity, until strength matched memory, until patience outpaced rage that he studied Zira's movements from a distance, slipping in and out of her territory at night, memorizing patrol routes, learning where cubs strayed farthest from protection. He never announced himself, never left obvious tracks. Every move was calculated. This wasn't conquest. This was correction. By early June 2015, history aligned itself cruelly. Zira's newest litter, 3 cubs, had reached the same age Kovu had been when he watched his mother die. The symmetry was not lost on him. On a still evening, as stars emerged over the basin and the air cooled, Kovu crossed into the heart of Maghari openly for the first time. He did not hide. He did not hurry. He walked with certainty. When Zira finally saw him, instinct screamed recognition, something familiar in his posture, his eyes, his confidence. But memory failed her. Time had buried the truth too deeply. Kovu roared. Not a territorial claim, but a verdict. The fight that followed was brutal and unrelenting. Zira fought with desperation, protecting her cubs, but age and injury slowed her. Kovu exploited every weakness, her blind side, her hesitation, her fatigue. He did not rush the end point one by one. The cubs fell, each death deliberate, each moment prolonged. Zira understood too late. When Kovu finally turned on her, there was no rage left, only completion. His jaws closed where hers once had, ending the cycle precisely where it began. And then, as dawn approached, he did what no one watching would forget, that he fed, not from hunger, from memory. When the sun rose over Maghari, for bodies lay near the waterhole, Zira and her cubs. Their story finished in silence. Kovu remained nearby, not frantic, not triumphant. He rested beneath an acacia tree, the same tree Nyota once favored. He had reclaimed more than territory, that he had reclaimed history. The basin changed after that night. Under Kovu's rule, violence faded. Balance returned. He formed alliances. Life resumed its rhythm, as it always does. But among the rangers who monitored Maghari, something had shifted. They had witnessed patience measured in years. Memory carried across seasons. A predator shaped not only by instinct, but by experience. Kovu did not roar often, that he did not need to. The land remembered him, and somewhere beneath the grass, beneath the dust, beneath the illusion that the wild forgets, Nyota's legacy endured. Sometimes we tell ourselves that the wild is simple, that animals act only on hunger, fear, and instinct, that once blood dries and grass grows back, everything is forgotten. But stories like this challenge that belief. What unfolded across those years was not chaos. It was not coincidence. It was patience, memory, consequence. The kind that doesn't scream for attention, but waits quietly until the moment arrives. In the wild, survival is law, but survival does not erase experience. Pain leaves marks deeper than scars. Loss changes behavior. And memory, once formed, does not simply disappear because time has passed. We often underestimate animals because they do not speak our language. Yet they remember landscapes, faces, dangers, and outcomes with a clarity that rivals our own. They learn, they adapt, and sometimes they carry lessons forward longer than we expect. This story is not about cruelty. It is not about glorifying violence. It is about understanding that actions ripple outward, sometimes far beyond the moment they occur. In nature, nothing happens in isolation. Every decision alters the balance, reshaping futures we may never witness. There is something deeply humbling in realizing that the wild does not forget lightly. That intelligence does not always look like problem-solving puzzles or tool use. Sometimes it looks like restraint, like waiting, like knowing when not to act until the moment truly matters. And perhaps that is the message that stays with us. Respect the lives that share this world with us. Respect the systems older than humanity itself. Because the wild is not reckless, it is precise. Not emotional in the way we define emotion, but deeply responsive to experience. When we strip animals of complexity, we make ourselves blind to the truth. They are not stories written for our entertainment. They are lives unfolding under rules shaped by millions of years of survival. This is why these stories matter, not because they shock us, but because they remind us that we are not the only beings capable of memory, patience, or consequence. The wild is watching. The wild is learning. And the wild never forgets as easily as we think. If this story made you pause, even for a moment, then it has already done what it needed to do.